What is MPGe? What does it mean, and do those numbers on the sticker on your car have any, well, relation to the real world? Well, welcome back to All Cars Y'all. I'm John, and as part of my EV quest to find out more about it and understand in more detail about EVs and how they function in the real world, I turned my all-seeing eye of Sauron onto the MPGe rating. And honestly, I think it's pretty dumb. I don't like it. It doesn't tell me anything. But in coming up with this, the EPA actually did something absolutely genius that I'd admit I never noticed before in my life. So roll back to 2007, and the U.S., recognizing that alternative fuel sources were coming along, they passed the Energy Independence and Security Act, which was to add more stuff to the sticker and give an equivalence for these alternative fuel cell vehicles. What they did was they determined that a gallon of gas had about 115,000 BTUs, which they equated to about 33.7 kilowatt hours of electric power. Then they could take that and come up with the MPGe for the car and put that on the sticker. I really don't like this because if I have an electric vehicle and I have 77 kilowatt hours, it makes no sense to have a miles per gallon equivalent because there's no gallons, right? It made a little more sense for some vehicles in between, like a hybrid. But interestingly, the EPA said you only had to do that if it was a plug-in hybrid, not a standard hybrid. So let's take a look at this first sticker here. This is a Chevy Equinox. You see it just has MPGe on it, the miles per gallon. If you have a 10-gallon tank and get 30 miles to the gallon, you have approximately 300 miles range. Now let's look at this Prius where you see it's just MPGe. It's not a plug-in Prius. Now what's really cool is if you look at the Toyota Mirai, it gives an MPGe, and you see that little H next to it. It says right there above it on the right too, H2, it is a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. And so this sticker, let's look at this one a little bit more detailed, shows you approximate driving range, 10 out of 10 on greenhouse gases, 10 out of 10 on a smog rating. And then once we jump to the Ioniq, you can see the MPGe is still there, but any of that greenhouse gas and smog emissions goes away because it's not emitting anything at the tailpipe. It gives you an estimated range, but it's still, the Ioniq gets 114 combined city highway MPGe. How does that relate to the size of my battery? I don't see that it does. This number means very, very little to me. But the EPA did something really smart, and I absolutely love it. Stay here on this Ioniq sticker for me with a minute, and right to the right there you see 30 kilowatt hours per 100 miles. So the EPA changed the sticker to start giving you a range per 100 miles. Now, the reason they did this is really interesting because there's something called the miles per gallon illusion. And they actually have this neat little graph on the EPA's website, which says if you improve from 10 to 15 miles per gallon, you're actually saving 33 gallons per 1,000 miles. But an increase from 30 to 35, you're only saving about 5 gallons. And so looking purely at a miles per gallon or a miles per gallon equivalent doesn't give you the real picture of how efficient your car is. So they flipped it, and they're giving you a range and the amount of energy being used. So you go back over here to this Equinox that we were looking at earlier, and you see 3.6 gallons per 100 miles. Go over to the Toyota Mirai we were looking at earlier, and it says 1.4 kilograms of hydrogen per 100 miles. I love this, and I think this should be predominant on the sticker, honestly. Now, what this doesn't do is necessarily compare the cost of the different fuels. Interesting on this Mirai using hydrogen, they do not give you an estimated fuel cost. If you look over here at this Toyota Prius again, it says 1.9 gallons per 100 miles. So you can see it's almost twice as efficient as that Chevy Equinox. So hopping back over here to this Ioniq again, it says 30 kilowatt hours per 100 miles. Well, then the math is pretty easy. If I've got a 77 kilowatt hour battery and I use 30 kilowatt hours per 100 miles, I know I'm going to go probably somewhere over 200 miles. It tells me far more than the MPGe does. I like what they did here, and as a matter of fact, the EPA has a really good sample on their website that breaks down everything that's on the sticker. It's cluttered. They tried. I guess that's what I'm saying. They tried. But it actually says, here's the fuel, here's how much you're going to save compared to an average vehicle, gasoline, miles per gallon, and gallons per 100 miles, and electric, MPGe, with a kilowatt hours per 100 miles. Giving you an estimated range as well, while also informing you if you're interested in the environmental impact of your vehicle. In conclusion, I don't love the MPGe because I just don't think it gives me any real information about the vehicle other than comparing it to another vehicle. If I walk up and I'm looking at let's use that Equinox for example, and it had a 12-gallon tank and I know it's going to get X number of miles per gallon, I can estimate for myself how efficient that vehicle is going to be. But looking at MPGe, I know nothing. Even if I know the kilowatt hours of the battery, that MPGe has no real bearing on my expectation of the efficiency of the vehicle, other than, again, comparing it to other vehicles like it. So that's what MPGe means. It's an equivalent of gasoline, but I think it loses its efficacy as you start to look at purely electric vehicles. Where it has some value is in that middle spot of either hydrogen fuel cell vehicles or perhaps hybrids and plug-in hybrids. Certainly they still using gasoline, it gives you an equivalence between, say, a Chevy Equinox or a Chevy Equinox hybrid. Which one's going to do how much better, but I like the energy used per 100 miles. That's across all sectors. I hope this helps, guys. Let me know any questions below.